All right, we're going to go ahead and go over the test review for the test on polynomials. So we are going to start with problem number one, where we were simplifying these expressions. And the very first one, you notice there's just a monomial or a single term outside the parentheses, and then a polynomial inside parentheses. So we would use the distributive property to simplify these expressions. All right, so we're going to multiply 3 times each and every one of these values to see what our expression is. So 3 times 2x to the third, 3 times 2 is 6, so 6x to the third. 3 times negative 4x squared, that would be minus 12x squared. And then 3 times 5x is 15x. And then finally, 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. All right, so that's the answer to that one. Taking a look at number two, very similar problem, but we are distributing a negative value to the parentheses. So negative 4 times 3x squared is negative 12x squared. Remember, all these minus signs you treat as negatives. So negative 4 times negative 5x is a positive 20x. And then negative 4 times negative 1 is a positive 4. All right, so now we're taking a look at number three, where we're distributing x squared. So we'll again multiply each one of those. Now we do need to remember that when we multiply like bases, we add exponents. So I'm not really going to do anything with the coefficients. You could understand that to be a 1. So 1 times 2 is 2. X squared times x to the third, 2 plus 3 is 5. So you add exponents when you multiply like bases. All right, now 1x squared times negative 3x squared. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. X squared times x squared is x to the fourth. All right, on the next one, remember there is an understood negative 1 in front of that x, so we're doing 1x squared times negative 1x. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. X squared times x. Remember, that's like a x to the first, so 2 plus 1 is 3. And then finally, 1x squared times 5 is 5x squared. Now, you may not see the answer written in that third term as negative 1x cubed. They may just write it as 2x to the fifth minus 3x to the fourth minus x cubed plus 5x squared. We usually do not include coefficients of 1 when we write them. We just leave the 1 off. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So number 4, we're going to do negative 1x times x cubed. Remember, there's like a 1 there, so negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. There's also a 1 on the x. 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay, so then negative 1x to the first times negative 4x to the second. Negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. X to the first times x to the second is x to the third. Right? And then negative 1x to the first times 5x. Well, negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. X to the first times x to the first is x to the second. And then finally, negative 1 times negative 2 is a positive 2. There is an x there, so we do need to include that x. So negative 1x times negative 2 is positive 2x. And then again, we don't usually write a negative 1x to the fourth. We just write negative x to the fourth as the final answer. All right, let's continue on with number 5 now. Okay, number 5, we're going to have 3xy times 4x. So 3 times 4 is 12. Remember, there's a 1 on each of these x's, so x to the first times x to the first is x to the second. We don't have anything with the y to multiply, so you just bring it down. Right, now we're going to distribute to the second term. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. We don't have an x to multiply with, but we do have a y to the first and a y to the first. That is y to the second. And finally, 3xy times negative 2, that would be negative 6xy. All right, let's take a look at now number 6. We're going to distribute again. They're getting a little bit more complicated each time here when we do this. So negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. X to the first times x to the second, that's x to the third. Y to the second times y is y to the third. Okay, now we're going to do negative 2 times negative 5, which is a positive 10. X to the first times x to the first is x to the second. Y to the second times y to the first is y to the third. And then finally, remember there is a negative 1 right here. So negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. There is an x, and then y to the second times y to the first. That's y to the third. All right, let's continue moving on to number 7. Number 7, now we're no longer doing multiplication. We have parentheses, yes, but we have a plus sign between the parentheses. We don't have anything in front of the parentheses, so this is really just combining like terms. You don't really have to even consider the parentheses in this particular problem. So I have a 2x to the third and a 1x to the third, so that's going to be 3x to the third. I only have one term that's a square, so 4x squared. Then we have a negative 5x and a positive 5x. Well, negative 5 plus 5 is 0, so those basically cancel out. And then negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. So 3x to the third plus 4x squared minus 2. All right, let's look at number 8. So number 8. Not exactly the same kind of problem as number 7 because there's a minus sign there. So it's like you have to distribute a negative 1 there. You can leave the first set of numbers in the parentheses alone, but then the second one we have to distribute a negative 1. Okay, so negative 1 times 2x squared is negative, or 2x cubed is negative 2x cubed. Remember, this is also a negative 1, so negative 1 times negative 1x squared is a positive 1x squared, or just x squared. Again, a negative 1 here. So negative 1 times negative 1x is a positive 1x, or just positive x. And then negative 1 times negative 5 is a positive 5. So now we're going to combine like terms after we've distributed that negative 1. So 4x cubed minus 2x cubed is 2x cubed. Okay, now I'm looking for quadratics or second degree polynomials here. So I'm going to bring down the x squared. Okay, then I have a 3x, and this is like a 1x. So 3x plus 1x is 4x. And finally, we have a negative 2 and a positive 5, which is positive 3. So there is our answer for number 8, 2x cubed plus x squared plus 4x plus 3. All right, now number 9, we have quite a few things going on. We have to distribute twice in this problem. So we'll start by distributing the 3. So 3 times 2x squared is 6x squared. Remember, there's a negative 1x. 3 times negative 1x is negative 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, over here, 2 times 3x squared is 6x squared. 2 times 1x, that's 2x. And then 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. So after we've distributed, then we can combine like terms. 6x squared plus 6x squared is 12x squared. Negative 3x and positive 2x is negative 1x, or just negative x. And then positive 12 and negative 12, that's 0. We don't really write plus 0 in our final answer, so we'll just leave it as 12x squared minus x. All right, and now we're moving on to number 10. Similar kind of problem in number 10. We're going to distribute a 4. So when we do that, we get 4x squared minus 20x plus 12. Okay, over here, I'm going to distribute a negative 2. Be careful with that minus sign. So negative 2 times 2x squared is negative 4x squared. Negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12x here. And negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. Now we need to combine like terms. 4x squared minus 4x squared is just 0. So those cancel. Negative 20x plus 12x is negative 8x. And then positive 12 minus 10, that is positive 2. So negative 8x plus 2 is the correct answer. All right, number 11. Let's take a look at that one. Okay, now we're going to multiplication of binomials. So anytime we start getting beyond a monomial times a polynomial, and we have two binomials or a binomial times a trinomial, which we'll do later on, we need to use what we call the box method. So we're going to create a box. We have two terms times two terms. So I need two going one way and two going the other way. So I'm going to do x plus 5 times x plus 8. All right, so now we're going to just multiply each box. So x times x is x squared. X times 8 is 8x. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times 8 is 40. Okay, now we're going to combine like terms. So x squared plus 13x plus 40. Okay, let's take a look at number 12. Oh, before I go any further, I just want to make a distinction between like number 11 and problems like number 7. So number 7, we had two sets of parentheses, but there was a plus sign there. So that's just combining like terms. That is not making a box. But when you do multiplication between two sets of parentheses like this, that's when you need to start making a box. So let's look at number 12. So we're going to again make a box, two terms times two terms. So x minus 3 and x minus 7. X times x is x squared. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 7 is positive 21. Again, we're going to combine like terms. You should notice very often our like terms are along a diagonal. So there's only one x squared term, but there's negative 3x and negative 7x, which is negative 10x. And then there's only one, what we call a constant term. That's a term without a variable. So x squared minus 10x plus 21 is the correct answer. All right, let's take a look at number 13. Okay, this one's a little more complicated because you have two variables. All right, so x minus y and x plus 4y. So x times x is x squared. X times y is 4xy. X times y, negative y is negative xy. And negative y times 4y is negative 4y squared. All right, so there is only one x squared term. Now, just so you know, this is like a negative 1xy combining with a 4xy. So negative 1 plus 4 is positive 3xy. And then we have a minus 4y squared. Be careful right here. Sometimes your own writing get in your way. Sometimes, like mine was, there is a minus sign in front of there in case you didn't notice that. So minus 4y squared at the end there. All right, let's continue on with number 14. Number 14, we have x minus 5 times x plus 2. So x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. We're going to combine like terms. So we get x squared minus 3x minus 10. Okay, number 15. Again, making a box here. Two terms times two terms, so 3x plus 1 and 2x minus 3. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. 1 times 2x is 2x. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. So we again only have one square term. 2x minus 9x is negative 7x. And then we have the minus 3. Okay, and number 16. Okay, so I have a 2x minus a 5y and x minus 3y. 2x times, this is like a 1x, so 2x times 1x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 3y is negative 6xy. Negative 5y times 1x is negative 5xy. And then negative 5y times negative 3y. Negative 5 times negative 3 is 15. Y times y is y squared. So 15y squared there. Once again, we do have some like terms in the middle here. So we get 2x squared. Negative 5 and negative 6 is negative 11xy. And then positive 15y squared. All right, this one's a little bit weird because we have a square in one of the parentheses. Okay, so we have x squared minus 2 and x plus 3. So this is like a x to the first. X to the second times x to the first is x to the third. X squared times 3, 3x squared. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Notice there are no like terms here. So we have four terms that we're going to write. X cubed plus 3x squared minus 2x minus 6. Cannot do anything with that because all of these are unlike terms. Okay, let's take a look at number 18. Very similar kind of problem here. So I have 3x squared minus 2, and then I have 5x plus 4. So 3x squared times 5x, that's 15. And remember, there's a 1 here, so 2 plus 1 gives you the 3. Then 3x squared times 4, that's 12x squared. Negative 2 times 5x is negative 10x. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. So we have 15x cubed plus 12x squared minus 10x minus 8. Again, no like terms to combine here. All right, so now we're gonna expand the problems a little bit more. We have two terms times three terms. So our box has to look a little bit different. We have two terms going one way, but we have three terms going another way. So x plus 3, and then 2x squared plus 5x plus 1. So 2x times x, 2x, excuse me, x times 2x squared is 2x to the third. X times 5x is 5x squared. X times 1, I'm going to write it as 1x just in case I need to combine things. 3 times 2x squared is 6x squared. 3 times 5x is 15x. 3 times 1 is 3. So you can see we have like terms on this diagonal, but we also have like terms on this diagonal. So we have one term with a x cubed, that's 2x cubed. You have two terms with an x squared. 6x squared plus 5x squared is 11x squared. And then we have two terms with a just an x. 15x plus 1x is 16x. And then we only have one constant term. So there is the answer, 2x cubed plus 11x squared plus 16x plus 3. Okay, a similar problem. So 2x minus 1 times, oh, I forgot. I'll make my box a little bigger. And then this way, 3x squared. I'm going to make this minus 1x instead of just minus x. And minus 4 just to really emphasize that there's a negative 1 in front of that x. 2x times 3x squared is 6x to the third, because remember there's a 1 there. 1 plus 2 is the 3. Same thing here, there's a 1 here. So 2x times negative 1x is negative 2x squared. 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. Negative 1 times 3x squared is negative 3x squared. Negative 1 times negative 1x is a positive 1x. And negative 4 times negative 1 is a positive 4. So again, whoa, sorry about that. Having a little difficulty for some reason. All right, let's try this here. So we're going to combine like terms here, and we're going to combine like terms here. So that leaves me with 6x cubed. Negative 3 and negative 2, that's negative 5x squared. 1 and negative 8, that's negative 7x. And then you have the positive 4 at the end there. All right, continuing on with number 21. Okay, we're going to square a binomial here. So I'm going to do squaring a binomial really means taking the 3x plus 5 and multiplying it again by the 3x plus 5. So we have 3x plus 5 here, and we have 3x plus 5 here. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times 5 is 15x. 5 times 3x is 15x. 5 times 5 is 25. So we need to combine like terms here. So this is 9x squared plus 30x plus 25. All right, number 22 is very similar to number 21. So we have a 4x minus y times 4x minus y. All right, so let's make our box. 2 terms times 2 terms. So 4x minus y, 4x minus y. 4x times x, that's 16x squared. 4x times, this is like a negative 1y, so negative 4xy. Same thing here, a negative 1y, so negative 1y times 4x is negative 4xy. And negative 1y times negative 1y is positive y squared. There is something to combine together here. So we have 16x squared. Negative 4 is negative 8xy. And then positive y squared. All right, let's take a look at number 23. Something unusual is going to happen with this one because they're not identical. So it's not going to be like exactly like the last two problems. We have x plus 3, and then we have x minus 3. X times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. 3 times x is positive 3x, and 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Look right here. These are opposites, so they would cancel. So we're just left with x squared minus 9. So you should recognize that this problem is very similar, the two parentheses are almost identical, except you have a plus in one and a minus in another. So when they are identical parentheses except for different signs in between, that middle term is always going to cancel like it did in this particular problem, and we're just going to be left with two terms. All right, let's take a look at number 24. Okay, number 24, whoops. Let's make a box again. Oh, sorry. Having a little technical difficulty here. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm doing something to make this thing change size. Hmm. All right, here we go. So we're gonna make, I don't know why this is happening, guys. Give me a second. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing here. Oh, I do not know what's happening. All right. Let's see what we got. See if I can make something happen here. All right. Oh, I do not know what's happening. All right. I think I got it. Let's hope. Nope, I do not. Okay. All right. Okay. Hopefully I've fixed the problems here. I had to restart my document. So here we go. On number 24, we have 5x minus 4y, and then we have 5x plus 4y. So once again, we kind of expect this to be just like the last problem because these are almost identical, but we have different signs. So 5x times x is 25x squared. 5x times 4y is 20xy. Negative 4y times 5x is negative 20xy. And negative 4y times 4y is negative 16y squared. So we can see that these are going to cancel, leaving us with just 25x squared minus 16y squared. All right, so we're down to the last part. These are the geometry applications of these. So let's take a look at number 25. It says, what is the perimeter of the rectangle? So one of the things we know about a rectangle is that opposite sides are the same length. So if the width is x plus 3, it's on both sides is x plus 3. And if the length is 3x minus 1, then the top and the bottom bases are going to be 3x minus 1. So you can add them all up. You can also recognize that this is two 3x minus 1s, and you can recognize that this is two x plus 3s. So if I distribute, I get 6x minus 2, and then 2x plus 6. So 6x plus 2x is 8x, negative 2 plus 6 is 4. You could also just look at the diagram and say, okay, 3x plus 3x, that's 6x plus 1x plus 1x, that gives me 8x. And then positive 3, that's 6, minus 1, 5, minus 1, 4. You can do it that way too, and combine them all together to get the answer. All right, let's take a look at now number 26. This one is another rectangle, but this time it's area. So we're not doing perimeter. Perimeter says add up all of the sides. This is not adding up all the sides. This is area. Area is length times width. So our length is 4x minus 2. Our width is 2x. So you have a monomial times a binomial. You are using the distributive property when you do that. So 4x times 2x is 8x squared. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. So this is the area of that rectangle. Okay, we're getting down to the last two. Okay, another area problem, but this time we have two binomials together. We'll still use length times width for an area of a rectangle. Our length is 4x minus 3. Our width is x plus 2. So in this case, we have to make a box because it's a binomial times a binomial. So 4x minus 3 and x plus 2. So this is 4x squared. This is 8x, negative 3x, and negative 6. We do have some like terms here. So this would be 4x squared plus 5x minus 6. So this is the area of that rectangle. And last one, we have volume here. So volume. Now that's not the same thing. You notice it's a three-dimensional figure. And in this three-dimensional figure, we have length, width, and height. Whoops, I wrote area, and I need to do volume. Volume equals length times width times height. All right, so you might not know which one to call length and which one to call width, so that doesn't really matter so much. We do know the height, how tall this is standing is x. So I'm going to call my length 2x minus 1, my width x plus 3, but you might have reversed them, and that's okay. And then the height is x. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. I think what I would do is I would multiply the first two and then distribute an x after that. So if I do the first two, I'm running out of room here, so I'm going to have to kind of really get it down a little small here. 2x minus 1 and x plus 3. So this is 2x squared, 6x, negative 1x, and negative 3. So that gives me 2x squared. I'm going to combine like terms here, plus 5x minus 3. But don't forget this x is still here. We have not multiplied by that x yet. So now we have to distribute that x because you're multiplying a trinomial by a monomial. When you multiply a monomial by a polynomial, you have to distribute. So 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 5x times x is 5x squared. And negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And there is the volume of this figure. And I think we are finally done with this review. So hopefully, as you were checking and watching, you were checking your answers, paying attention to mistakes you may have made so that you don't make those same mistakes on the test.